Hello, 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 everyone. Welcome in. Happy hump day. Happy Wednesday. Um, waiting for Salty to jump in here into the chat, so we'll just kind of hang loose a little bit till she gets in here. Going to take a little bit of a look at Lori Vallow. And it's interesting to me because she was Lori Vallow Daybell in the prior hearings that we watched in Idaho, but now it's just Lori Vallow. So where does Chad fit in? Where does Chad fit in? She doesn't have his name anymore. But she was already convicted of multiple counts of murder in Idaho for the horrific deaths of her children. We all are probably very familiar with the story where she was in Hawaii when they came and served her with papers. And now she's in Arizona. She got deported out of Idaho and Arizona. Excommunicated from Idaho. Not quite. Salty, hello. Welcome in.
Hello. Good evening.
Good evening. How are you doing?
Doing pretty good. I'm tired tonight for some reason.
I am tired as well.
My baby turned 18 today, and it's been like a day, but he's good today, so everything's good. But yeah, it's just a weird day.
Yeah, it feels like an energy draining type of day. So
yeah,
let's figure out where we're at with Lori Vallow.
Like
I was saying,
goodness.
it's kind of weird to me that I think when she was on trial in Idaho, it was like Lori Vallow Daybell. So she was still by like her married name, but now in Arizona, it's just Lori Vallow.
Yeah. I don't know why I don't know.
Yeah.
She's still legally married to Chad. As far as I know, they're still married. So I don't know what the difference is now, why they got it like that.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense, but you know what? Whatever happens in cults stays in cults, and we may never figure it out.
Yeah, this is true with that one. There's been a lot to unpack with the whole Lori Vallow, Chad Daybell, the whole thing with the two of them. I know when her trial was going on, his attorney would come in and view her trial because she was on trial before him, and made me curious about what the angle they would take during his trial. And his trial was so uneventful, you know what I mean? It was and like Lori and her little theatrics that she do. I don't know, Chad just seemed to be like, I don't know. I don't know if they think they did anything wrong, honestly.
Yeah, it is odd, and to have his attorney in her trial would be super odd. His name was Pryor, I think. Wasn't that his name?
Pryor. Mm-hmm.
And he took that case in exchange for the purchase of that house, right?
The
house
house.
where
Mm-hmm.
the kids were actually found.
Yeah, it was Chad's family home. Where him and his wife and kids lived. They had raised their kids, or they had lived there a majority of their lives. And so it was his home, and that's where JJ and Tylee were found on his property when they were eventually found.
Right. And so if you're an attorney and you take that on, I mean, how weird is that? How weird is that?
Some of them, let's just be honest, some of them don't think about it. They just want their payment.
Right.
regardless of how that's going to get done. They're just going to take that, And I believe now the house has been sold.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it has. I think he got out from underneath it, and it's not in that attorney's name anymore. But it definitely was like right off the bat. Like he changed his lawyer services for that house where the kids' bodies were found. I just
It's crazy though that he would think that, well, one day the house might bring me the money that I need. Because people, I guess there are a lot of people out there who will buy um, memorabilia, right, from serial killers and things of that nature. There's a market for stuff like that, believe it or not. And it's crazy some of the things you can find for sale in some of those places that people are willing to buy and are seeking them out to buy. I I wouldn't want it. I didn't want no part of it.
yeah, I don't get it. All
So
right, let's
after her conviction in Idaho, now she has been taken back to Arizona to face the charges of Charles Vallow's death, her husband,
right. Her husband before
or her
Chad Daybell.
conspiracy. Yeah.
Yes,
Because
right,
Chad was married to Tammy, and Lori was originally married to Charles, and then she ended up separating from Charles and then moving on with Chad.
right. So here's an article that I pulled up on a local news paper. Why is Lori Vallow facing fresh murder conspiracy charges in Arizona? Um, just a quick read. Doomsday Cult Mom arraigned on murder charges relating to the 2019 shooting death of her fourth husband. Oh my gosh, fourth husband.
Yeah.
Like if if you meet a woman and she's had three husbands before you, dude, what are you thinking? I'm just saying, dude, what are you thinking? Anyway,
Yeah.
and so after Charles was her fourth, then Chad was her fifth.
hmm
Oh, anyway, and
Yeah, Lori didn't,
uh,
she wasn't shy around the men, it doesn't seem like.
no, and she wasn't afraid to get married and divorced and remarried and redivorced and
I
remarried and redivorced and
I
remarried
don't
and
understand
redivorced.
that. People do that all the time, apparently, and I don't understand it, but it's a thing. People do it.
Well, but I can tell you for a fact that divorce is highly frowned upon in the LDS religion. It's
hmm
highly frowned upon. So to have a
Exactly.
woman who has been married and divorced multiple times is like it's on the fringe of the LDS religion. Like most of them don't, and I can understand where there might be cases where it might be justifiable, but it's highly suspect to have
Yeah,
that
and
many.
by the time she was with Charles, um, she was becoming more, not so much in line with the LDS religion the mainstream part that we know of, but she was becoming more indoctrined into the other type stuff that was going on.
Right, and
Like in the
the
Chad
French
Daybell.
stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. It was becoming more apparent with her, and I think that was one of their big issues between her and Charles, honestly. Just from the interviews
right.
I've seen of him, the things he said to the police, the things he was saying to his sister, to Kay, because Kay Woodstock is JJ Vallow's biological grandmother, and Larry and Kay didn't miss one day of Lori's trial. They went to Chad's trial. They tried forever to find those kids and to get her to talk to them and tell them where the kids were at and all these things. Um, and interestingly enough, their attorney is all with Shannon Gray is the same attorney that the Gongalves family in Idaho now has. He was their attorney throughout their whole process, because people, when you have they weren't going to allow Kay and Larry to sit in the entire trial of Lori because they were going to be called as witnesses. Well, they worked it out. They could go in and testify in the beginning and get their testimony over, so they could come back in and be a part of the rest of the trial. And that's how they had it worked out for them. So,
Wow.
yeah,
Oh, that's crazy.
it's crazy. The whole story with her how those kids just disappeared and how it broke on the news that, and then Nate Eaton caught them in Hawaii. We had heard they went to Hawaii. He went there and he caught them, caught up with them and tried to grab an interview with them. And that was our first real glimpse of this Lori and Chad, except for photos we'd seen on the news of them. And then they found them in Hawaii and arrested them both. And, court ordered them basically to tell them where these kids were at. Because she was still into saying, no, I'm not telling you where my kids are at.
Right.
It's just crazy how they thought they'd get away with all that.
Yeah. Yeah. So they can lay poolside in Hawaii
Yeah.
while the kids are buried in shallow graves in the backyard of that property. It's just
It's crazy. And
now,
when you look into the Alex Cox aspect, Lori's brother, and what she was able to do to him and the manipulation she had with him as well. He actually is the one who shot Charles.
right.
In the apartment. And
then claimed it was self-defense, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or something like that.
Yes. And he was also, unfortunately appears to have helped Chad kill JJ and Tylee. They know he was in that backyard within feet of where Tylee was buried, from his cell phone data records. I saw all that in trial. And they didn't make me believe otherwise. He was there, and so it's just the manipulation level. And there were a lot of people during that trial that were going on and on about the book that Chad wrote and how it's this fiery love story and like one of those cheap romance novels. And people would read from it and quote it and they would laugh. And it was like, this was so much more than just two people trying to off everybody to get it on. It was more than just about sex with those two. You know what I mean? It went way deeper than that, I think, on their religion level and what they thought they were doing. And that got missed, I think, by a big majority of people, not by everybody, but by some.
Right. And so I wonder if we're going to see any more evidence of that in the Arizona murder trials, if in her case that's coming here in Maricopa County, because so this article was written back before her trial got delayed, but it said her trial is scheduled to begin on August 1st. But that's not a realistic start date, says the judge. Duh. We've waited for over 4 horrific years for Lori Vallow to face trial for murdering my sweet, kind, generous, loving, and dearest brother, Charles Vallow. Wow. Your justice is finally coming. So she already had a Rule 11 hearing last month that she ducked out of. So we're going to see what happens tomorrow. But this article says Ms. Woodcock, who is also the grandmother of Lori's slain 7-year-old son, JJ. So JJ's grandma and Charles's mother. Another huge step forward. Charles's death was the first step in a wider plot by Lori and her current husband, alleged cult leader Chad Daybell, to rid their lives of obstacles, as they term their spouses and children. Wow. That's just so disgusting at a level that I can't even fathom. Their obstacles were their spouses and their children. In May 2023, Lori was found guilty of the children's murders and of conspiring to kill her husband's former wife, Tammy Daybell. She was sentenced to 3 life terms. We know that was in Idaho. So now we're going to see what happens here in Arizona when she goes on trial, if she ever gets past her Rule 11 competency hearing, which is what is scheduled for tomorrow.
Yeah, she had the same process done in Idaho. It took a while, but she was eventually found competent to stand trial there. So I don't know how that's going to play out for her here, what their differences will be, what their rules are, what their parameters are for this kind of thing. Haven't really been following it too super closely. I know she's trying to represent herself, which if you're not competent, how can you make the judgment call to represent yourself? So They have to walk, tread with this woman because they don't want to get a mistrial or anything like that thrown out there because they didn't give her rights, and do it properly. There's really no rush to do it, so let them, do what they got to do with her. But the fact, that her standing silent in Idaho, the way she didn't say a word during her entire trial, she didn't want cameras in there. She didn't mind the audio, but don't put me on camera, and then at the end of the evening, we'd get the audio from the day's worth of trial testimony, and with Chad, we had the cameras. But it's going to be interesting to see how they, I don't know what they need to prove for conspiracy there in Arizona. Do you know what I mean? Because that's what
Yeah.
she's being charged with, is conspiracy for the murder of her husband there. And the
Right.
kids
This
were
article
home when that
says,
happened.
right, Lori will be tried in 2 separate cases in Arizona on 2 counts of conspiracy to commit first-degree murder. In one case, Lori, along with her brother Alex, are accused of conspiring to kill Charles in the months leading up to his death. Charles told local police he was concerned that Lori may hurt him or their children. Dude, walk away. Run
Mhm.
away. Run away, dude. Oh my gosh, if you really think your spouse is capable of killing you.
He actually did, though. He called the police on one occasion to help, to get some sense into her. She was supposed to swap the kid with him. But there's a whole body cam out there of him talking to a police officer and telling them, what she's becoming and what she's been doing, as far as her strange and bizarre beliefs. Now, remember, in the end, she says these kids were zombies, and that's basically why they were killed. And then in court, when she finally got up at the end of the trial and talked, she said there were no murders here. Because in that woman's heart and soul, did she believe she did what she thought she was supposed to be doing? And if you go and take a deep dive into the LDS, they teach you to prepare for the zombies because they're going to return and people are possessed. And it's part of their teachings. It's like, so how can we discount what this woman is saying? How many of y'all think your kids are zombies? If you look at that other case, what was that? Um, Jody, okay, I can't remember her last name. They were there in Utah, but she was the psychologist lady. The other lady had the podcast, or the 8 Passengers or whatever, and they were extreme religion, and they were locking the kids up. The kids were horrible. The kids were bad. They had to be chained up in the room, and all these things they were doing to the kids in the name of trying to rebuke the devil from the children. So
Hildebrandt, Jody Hildebrandt.
yes, them too. What they did in the name of religion to teach these children right from wrong is insane. Um, Lori and them weren't far off from that. When you're trained and you're taught to believe, you have to prepare for this type of thing, and these things can happen. And what do you do when they start to believe their own children are that? I mean, that's crazy. Who did they take them somewhere and make some determination? I mean, like a second opinion. I don't know. I'm not trying to make light of it because I think it's a crazy thing. But how much of that was true belief system and how much of that was just let's use this to benefit us and get rid of them all so we can just go live our happy life. Was it a mixture of
Right.
both?
Right. That's I think the slippery slope
Yeah.
that you go down with a cult. And most people don't consider the Mormon church a cult nowadays. They used to, but there are teachings within the LDS church that I I've never heard them ever teach anything about zombies like in the mainstream LDS teachings.
Yeah.
I mean, there are thoughts and theories about the, you know, when, why is my mind drawing a blank right now? Like when Jesus comes back and everybody raises up from the graves.
Yeah.
What is that? Whatever that is.
Yeah.
That's
Don't make me think right now, too.
but there are thoughts and theories about
Yeah.
that, and that's kind of zombie-esque in thought, but that's not really zombies, and that's definitely not
Right.
anywhere where Chad and Lori were going with their way out there thoughts and conspiracies and where everybody's going to be. So was she the one that made up the we're calling this person a zombie and that person a zombie, or was he the one that did that?
Well,
Do we know?
he speaks about all of that in his books and the teachings that he was doing, because before that's how she ended up hooking up with Chad, is when she was moving more into the fringe side of things. Um, she began to see. I think she read his book. She was going to around to the different talks he would hold, things of that nature. And there was teachings in there in the books and in the incorporated with the church stuff that about the zombies and the second coming and all that thing, and um, how your loved ones can become zombies and things like that. So yeah, that kind of started it. And then as they got together, it grew, and then they decided the kids were zombies, and that is why they had to be taken care of. In her mind, she didn't do anything bad because she had to do it because they were zombies. That's the whole. It was like, no, that's crazy talk, but that's what that was based on, or
Right, but
that's what
what
they claim.
yeah, but what gets me about that belief system and them acting on it, like physically violently acting on it, is that she was married at the time. She
Yes,
was married to the guy that she is going to go to trial for killing now. And her, was that her brother-in-law?
it was her nephew, niece's husband, I believe. Brandon was.
Okay. And he's the one that actually shot him, right?
Her
But there
brother shot. Okay, there's two people that were murdered. There was
okay,
Lori's. Yeah,
Alex Cox is the
Alex is
one
her
that killed,
brother.
yes.
Hmm.
And
Killed her
he killed
husband.
her husband at the time, right? And
Yes.
that's what she's on trial for now. That's what she's going to court for now.
And I believe for the attempted murder of Brandon Boudreaux, which would have been her niece's husband.
That's just crazy. It's crazy.
A lot of people in their wake, in their path there, that they just decided it would be okay to take care of everybody, and no one was going to ask questions or come talk to them, and they could just talk their way out of it based on what was my religious belief. Um, so we did what we had to do. That's crazy. You don't get to do that.
Yeah. So this article says despite the imminent end to their marriage, Charles and Lori were tied together by their adoptive son, JJ. Rest in peace, JJ.
Yeah.
Months before Charles was killed, Lori had called him and told him to take the kids. He was on a business trip in Houston at the time. When he returned, his truck was not at the airport, and Lori had thrown out all of his clothes and drained their bank account. Nice. More body cam footage shows officers with him at the house kicking in the door. They had an order. So police officers had an order to pick Lori up for a mental health exam and to check on the children. Wow. So they got a court order for her to have a mental health exam.
Yeah.
That is rare. Like that's really rare for a court to order that for a parent that has custody of the children at the time.
Yeah, she was already exhibiting a lot of strange behaviors that would be red flagged, you know what I mean? Um, when this was all starting to happen. And she honestly was the kind of woman that believed she could talk her way out of everything. She honestly believes that.
Well, she believed that all the way through her sentencing in Idaho
Mhm.
because her
Yes, she did.
her sentencing statement in Idaho was like on the level of Sarah Boone in
Oh,
Florida. Like
oh,
they're
yeah.
very, very similar. There are a lot of
Yep.
similarities.
It very, very much gave me the Lori Vallow vibes. Um, so Sarah's is a little more, I don't know. I
I
don't
don't
know.
know either.
That's just straight up narcissism. Lori's a little bit of that and a little bit of crazy all balled into one. You know what I mean? Like there
Right,
might be
right.
some real underlying mental health things going on with Lori. Not to excuse anything she's done, because there's no excuse for what she did. None whatsoever. There were people out there who loved those kids who would have absolutely took those kids off her hands, and she could have went and lived her little life with Chad, and nobody would have said another word to her. But she didn't choose that path. She chose the wrong path, and there's no justification for it at all.
No, there's not.
There really isn't. And you can scream religion out there all you want, but nobody was buying that from the beginning.
No. There's no religion or cult that is designed to take the lives of your children. I'm
No,
sorry, but there's that I don't no LDS, no LDS offshoot religion, no Waco, no anything is designed to take the lives of your children. I mean, that's
no,
evil.
they're
That's
gifts for God.
that's
They're gifts from God.
yes.
But if you
Yeah.
and when I started to really look more, because I looked a lot into the LDS, and there's so many things they cannot do. You know that if you're in the religion and you're practicing it, that you just cannot be doing the drinking. Anything, so many rules, right? But a lot of religions have them. But when you looked at the Hildebrandt situation with what they were doing to the kids as well, and what their beliefs were, and then you look more at what Jody was doing and the cultish type stuff. This is a brewing pot, in my eyes, for cults to flourish in the name of a religion, you know. And people start falling into these things, and what makes somebody, even listening to the husband of the lady who did the 8 passengers, how he was drawn in by Jody, and the things that the manipulation levels she would use to make them believe her, and her theory on the way things should be. It was insane to me. And I couldn't help but go back to Chad and Lori and some of the things they were talking about and doing. If you look over there at the Kansas City moms case for the sober and citizens, they think they're absolutely right, even though they're quite wrong. They firmly believe they're right, and it was a fringe of religion they were under. So it's crazy how the cult world meets religion, and how some people can be so strong that they can get others to fall in line and believe it and go with them. It's
Right.
crazy how that is a powerful thing, I guess, for some people.
It is, and that's where some people get off on it. I mean, Charles Manson and the
Yeah.
dude down in South America,
The guy
whatever
who
his
ran
name was.
Waco there,
Yep, David
all of that.
Koresh. Yep,
Yeah,
yep.
yeah.
S-
Mhm.
they get off on that power, but on the outside looking in, it's pure evil.
That was
Taking the lives of
yeah.
your children is pure evil. There is
And using
no,
religion to hide behind it,
yeah,
and
yep,
using that religion to feed your fire there, and fuel what you want, and to get people to do what you want in the name of that religion. It is you try to understand how people will fall for it, but they do. And I don't know if they just so want to believe and looking for that higher calling, and it was already raised in that type of situations. I mean, it's just how it can manifest is crazy.
right. But at some point in time, and this is just my theory, this is just my speculation, my personal opinion. You have the choice to make a choice. And the choice is to choose
Mhm.
evil or to choose not evil. And they chose evil in those
Yeah,
circumstances. They
they
had a
certainly
choice.
did.
Yeah.
Yep. They had a choice the entire time. Chad could have got a divorce. Lori could have given the kids to Charles. She could have given them back to Kay. I mean, there's so many choices that she could have done, that wouldn't have harmed the kids at all. It would just made her look. I don't know if, you know, she just didn't want to look like that mother who gave her kids up. But come on, you'd rather be looked at as the mother who killed the children? I mean, that we were just going to say, okay, well, we understand it was this religious thing, and you thought they were zombies, so it's justified. There's no justification for any of that. It's crazy that they thought they could get away with it, you know?
Yeah. Yep. And that's where this trial is headed eventually, whether she appears for her Rule 11 hearing tomorrow or not. So this article says months before Charles was killed, Lori had called him and told him to take the kids. So she did call him and tell him to take the kids. He was on a business trip in Houston. When he got back from the trip in Houston, his truck had been picked up from the airport, so he didn't have it. And Lori had thrown out all of his clothes and drained their bank account. Body cam footage shows officers with him at the house. So he calls police, apparently, and police go to the house, kick in the door, and they had an order to pick her up for a mental health exam and to check on the children. The police say, probably body cam footage, the only reason why we're here is some of the statements that you made towards our dispatcher. So Charles called, told the dispatcher, hey, we need to go check on the kids. We need to go check on her. But according to police, no crime had been committed, so they left. On July 11th, Charles went to Lori's home for a custody exchange that turned deadly when he was shot by her brother, Alex Cox, in Chandler, Arizona. Some people call Chandler/Mesa Salt Lake City South. There are a whole bunch of LDS churches and a few temples down in that area around Chandler and Mesa. Alex Cox told police he acted in self-defense, but he died suddenly at the age of 51 in 2019. Hours after Tammy's body was exhumed. How crazy is that?
I know, and how convenient. I mean, he wasn't the bride. I don't know if you know, but Lori's other brother, I don't know if it's her brother and cousin or who the other guy actually is. He has a podcast now. Lori's son has a podcast now on YouTube. Colby had a chance to interview Lori recently by phone, and she doubles down on a lot of the things that she said and did, and as to why she did what she's done. And you can just listen to her level of what was right and what she thinks is real, you know, versus what isn't. It's just crazy. But her other brother, Lori has some kind of, you know, like a manipulation level of control over Alex. And what they don't know was Alex about to, you know, everything was coming, the heat was coming down on them. Would he have turned against Lori and Chad, right? About the murders and everything that's taken place. And then lo and behold, he passes away too, mysteriously. So there was a lot of questions there about that.
And the crazy thing is she's been found guilty of the murders in Idaho. And we still have some questions, don't we? I mean, we know how she was involved, but we don't know all of the peripheral players and what the roles were, what role her
No,
brother
they don't know
played.
exactly who did what. You know, they got it
Yeah.
pretty close as far as what evidence was taken from the bodies. It from what I could gather from Lori's trial and Chad's, Chad and Alex is the ones that did end up doing something to the kids. Now, they don't really know when, though, if they were done like weeks apart. The kids killed weeks apart. And I say that because they know that when they were in, I think it was Yellowstone, the pictures they have there are time stamped, and JJ and Tylee are both in the picture. But not long after that, Tylee's not seen. And it's several weeks that go by before I think last contact with JJ was made by anybody. So, I don't even know if they were killed at the same time, how that all went down. But, Alex was the one all over the back of that property and Chad's property. Lori, if she had been there, her phone wasn't there, and she wasn't there when his wife was home, obviously. I don't think Lori ever went to the property. I don't think Lori ever got her hands dirty as far as that goes, but she knew all about what was going on. And she had a big hand in it, you know what I mean? But I don't know if she actually did the actual killing and the things that were done in the backyard to the kids. So, I mean, that was strictly Alex and Chad.
Right. And that's kind of the same way that happened with her ex-husband, Charles, because Alex told police that he acted in self-defense, but then he died unexpectedly at the age of 51. And it was ruled natural causes, but there was Narcan found in his system. So
why was there Narcan? That makes no sense, does it?
It definitely looks suspicious.
Why would you? Yeah, no one's going to administer Narcan on purpose unless they're overdosing. So why would you even have it in your system if you aren't overdosing on anything to start with? What would be the point? I don't know what that would do to you if you weren't, ODing and you took it. I don't know what would happen. I have to look into that, but I don't know what the point of taking that would even be, or even giving it to somebody. I don't know.
No. Maybe somebody should look into that. Maybe.
They probably have, and they probably have looked at every angle they can to figure out if something was done to him, because it's just too convenient when he's like a loose end, right? A loose end that could talk. And I think if he had been pressured enough, he probably would have talked. But
he can't talk anymore, can he?
Exactly.
Talk at all. Nope.
Exactly. Someone made sure that couldn't happen.
Meanwhile, Lori and her kids had moved to Idaho shortly after Charles died, and before Alex died. Prosecutors said she made the move to be closer to Mr. Chad Daybell, so they could continue their plot to remove any obstacle to their happiness.
Yeah.
That's an interesting interpretation of their fringe religious beliefs. Weeks after JJ and Tylee vanished without being reported missing by their mother, another member of the family faced an attack back in Arizona. So here we go with Brandon Boudreaux, ex-husband of Lori's niece, was targeted in a drive-by shooting outside his home in Gilbert, Arizona, Salt Lake City South. The bullet missed his head by mere inches. Melanie Pawlowski,
yes,
was very close to Lori and believed in many of the same bizarre doomsday prophecies that Lori and Chad believed in. This ultimately ended her marriage to Mr. Boudreaux, with whom she shared custody of their 5 children. From evidence heard at Lori's trial, it is apparent that he, too, was considered an obstacle.
Yes.
Brandon Boudreaux was an obstacle because he didn't believe in this doomsday fringe cult LDS thing that Chad and Lori had going on.
Right, and her niece was becoming more into that and more involved with it, and he didn't like it. He didn't believe in it. And her niece Melanie was becoming more and more involved with what Lori was doing.
He was a dark spirit, or a dark spirit had possessed him.
Yes, and after you looked at Chad's teachings, when you were a dark spirit, then that was part of the zombie thing. And once you were labeled a dark spirit, they had to do things to rid you and to rid them of that dark spirit. That it was no longer you. You were now possessed and taken over by dark spirit. That you were no longer there.
So, Google
her
location
two
data.
for not overdosing. Okay.
Google location data showed Alex Cox traveling to and from Gilbert, Arizona, from Idaho in early October 2019. Okay. Interesting. I wonder where he lived. Did he live in Idaho or did he live in Arizona? That they're like interchangeable at this point,
They
and
had
I'm having trouble keeping track.
They lived in Arizona, but Lori had already moved to Idaho and everything before she met Chad, married Chad. I can't recall the timeline of when she actually went to Idaho, and then they ended up in Rexburg,
Right.
right outside of Rexburg.
And Rexburg is a college town, if I remember right.
Uh-oh, Joe's having a little bit of an internet connection. He is traveling, so where he is not like.
Am I back? All right. I think I made my way back. I think I'm here. Thank you. Let's see if we can find some more on this. Share screen. Why is Lori Vallow facing fresh murder charges? Let's watch that. Nope, that's not a watch. That's a read, and we've already been reading that. All right, so stop that. And so she wanted to represent herself. Let's see her speaking in Arizona.
About 40 minutes, that discussion today was really all about whether Vallow is mentally fit to stand trial here in Arizona. Her previous trials do not have any impact on what is happening right here in the Valley.
We've never seen the state fight to keep someone in competency proceedings. It's usually the complete opposite.
Lori Vallow's defense attorney today pointing out that this is an unusual court hearing and arguing that her client is mentally fit to stand trial, citing previous evaluations from doctors.
You asked us to come back and give you some evidence of competency. I think we have more than provided that at this point.
In her Idaho trial for the 2019 murders of her two children, JJ and Tylee, Vallow was initially ruled incompetent. She then went through court-ordered treatment and later cleared for trial, then convicted and sentenced to life in prison. Today, a Maricopa County judge asked Vallow herself about that process.
I did go through a process of several things, several classes, competency class, and meeting with doctors and evaluators, many evaluators.
Vallow is now facing conspiracy to commit murder charges in Arizona for allegedly plotting the deaths of her fourth husband and her niece's husband. Arizona court rules require evidence that a defendant is mentally able to understand what's going on in court. The judge today eventually ruled that a doctor will decide if she is mentally fit.
The ultimate goal being to get people to a state of competency so they can participate in their own trial.
Jason Lamb is a criminal defense attorney in Phoenix. He says the competency program can often include medication or therapy.
Mental health is an evolving thing. So simply because she was competent in Idaho has no bearing whatsoever on her mental status and her competence during the Arizona proceedings.
Now, the doctors will share their findings with the court the week after Thanksgiving. Of course, we'll share what they determine and if Vallow can stand trial. Reporting in the newsroom tonight, I'm Michael Raimondi for Arizona's Family.
So that's pretty much the long and the short of it on the hearing that's going to happen tomorrow morning in Maricopa County. She didn't show up for her last hearing a month ago. So it will be interesting to see if she shows up tomorrow, because they had to cancel / postpone the hearing a month ago. And it's the exact same hearing that's supposed to happen in the morning. So we'll find out, I guess, if she shows up and if she's found competent to stand trial. Let's look at an article from where she was sentenced in Idaho, which has nothing to do with her Arizona charges, but it kind of does because it does. I have no other way to put it. Because she was found guilty of murder of children. So if she does end up going to a jury trial, it will be interesting to see if they can find a fair jury for her that hasn't heard of what she was convicted of in Idaho.
Who was convicted of killing 2 of her children and conspiring in the murder of her husband's first wife, has just been sentenced. CNN's Camilla Bernal is following this story for us. Camilla, what was the decision here?
Brianna, the judge is still on the bench, but his decision is life in prison without the possibility of parole. The judge telling her that this was essentially a mother murdering her children and saying this really was the ultimate crime. He described it as horrific, said it was unimaginable. And she sat there listening to the judge this entire time. But what was interesting in this case was that she took the stand during the sentencing, and she started out by reading verses from the Bible, saying that her children have come to visit her, to speak to her, saying that her children say that she did not kill them. She was saying that she didn't kill her children, or Tammy Daybell, who was her husband's first wife. So what the judge here then told her was that she was still in this bizarre religious rabbit hole. And he's saying, you know, you're clearly still down there. That was directly from the judge as she continued to say that she was in a good place, that she has heard from her children. She says she went to heaven and came back. And she told this courtroom that her children came back to hug her and to tell her that she did the right thing here. So again, the judge saying that this is a crime punishable by its maximum sentence of life without the possibility of parole. And so, of course, we'll have to see what happens in the next case, because she is accused in Arizona as well. So it is not over for Lori Vallow Daybell. Brianna.
We have faced down death.
Yeah, yep, she cray. So it'll be interesting to see when she shows up in Arizona, if she shows up tomorrow. I plan to be there. I'm in it. If she's there, if I have, it'll still be good for me to get familiar with Maricopa County Superior Court. Young black economist. Don't you remember what Abraham Lincoln said? He said, "He who represents himself has a fool for a client." I believe that was an Abraham Lincoln quote, maybe attributed to somebody else. But I mean, yeah, no. Even if I thought myself capable of representing myself, I don't know that I would. Let's look at her inmate information. This is what I found out from her. So this is from the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office. General information. Lori Vallow, date of birth is blank. That's interesting. She was born on June 26th of 1973. So she's like almost 2 months, not quite 2 months older than my little sister. So I kind of feel that vibe a little bit, but no, I don't feel that vibe because my little sister has never killed any children. Case Sierra 2021-0017040001. No bond. Bound over to Superior Court. Next court appearance is 12/5/2024. Oh, wait, that's tomorrow. Superior Court Criminal Division Y, 201 West Jefferson Street, room 904 9D, Phoenix, Arizona. Right now, where I'm staying, that's about an hour drive. So I'm going to get up at 6 in the morning and go check that out, whether she shows up or not. There are a couple of other cases in Maricopa County. There's the Gilbert Goons, Preston Lord. Which if you haven't heard, the Gilbert Goons are like a teenage gang in the valley southeast of Phoenix. Mesa, Gilbert, Queen Creek, Santan Valley. And they killed another teenager last Halloween, Preston Lord. And there are like 6 or 7 of them that are headed for trial. And that will be in Maricopa County Courthouse. And then there's the Arizona State Professor Zhu, Z-H-U, Zhu, that shot his wife to death several months ago. And his trial is coming up too. So we may check in on those. Next court appearance is not listed on this. Yeah. Yes. Her phone call with her eldest son, I did listen to that, and that was mind-blowing. That was mind-blowing. Yeah, the Spoiled Kid Gang, yes. The Gilbert Goons is a really bizarre case, and I plan on following that, and I plan on being in court for that as much as I can. And maybe I can find some side interviews to get in. You never know with the family, you never know with the victims who's going to be willing to talk, especially to social media, who's not mainstream media. Maybe they will and maybe they won't. Let's see if we can watch something else about this case. Why did she not show? Okay, here we go. So at her last sentencing hearing, or her last competency hearing, she didn't show up. So let's find out a little more information about that and maybe why she won't.
Mom Lori Vallow was expected in court today, but she didn't show up.
Attorneys say she is refusing to go through a mental evaluation. She needs it before she faces her next round of murder charges here in Maricopa County. Michaela Marshall tells us what happens next in this case.
Infamous doomsday mom Lori Vallow was a no-show in this Maricopa County Superior courtroom Thursday.
I think this is just a completely unique case.
Vallow was convicted in Idaho last year and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole for the 2019 murders of her 2 youngest children, JJ and Tylee, and Tammy Daybell, her 5th husband's previous wife. The judge said she justified the crimes by going down a bizarre religious rabbit hole. Now she's facing more charges in 2 Arizona cases, accused of orchestrating the murder of her 4th husband, Charles Vallow, and attempting to murder her niece's husband, Brandon Boudreau.
It's hard for me to get into the mind of a woman who is convicted of killing her own children because she thought they were zombies. So I really don't know what's going on in Miss Vallow's mind, but it's certainly possible that she's not cooperating with this process because she just doesn't think it's necessary.
Arizona criminal defense attorney Russ Richelsoff is not connected to this case. Right now, Vallow Daybell is refusing to speak with mental health professionals who are trying to determine if she is competent to stand trial. In her Idaho trial, she was initially ruled incompetent and was ordered to receive treatment. Later, she was determined to be mentally fit.
Is it possible that she could be found competent in the case in Idaho and not competent here in Arizona?
Yes, just because those two things are separated in time.
Richelsoff describes competency as a moving target that can change. And what matters now is Vallow Daybell's current mental state.
Just because she was incompetent in the past and then made competent doesn't mean she's competent today.
It was Vallow Daybell's previous attorneys who requested the competency hearing, but her current legal team is now asking to withdraw that motion.
Unfortunately, Ms. Vallow not speaking with the mental health experts is causing some delay, as we're seeing here.
The public might view this as a delay tactic. This is really about being thorough with the case.
The judge gave the doctor about 2 more weeks to determine if Vallow Daybell is competent.
I know you want to move the case along.
Richelsoff says it's in everyone's best interest to continue with the competency hearings and mental health evaluations so that whether she's mentally fit cannot be questioned in the case that there are any future appeals. In the newsroom, Michaela Marshall for Arizona's Family.
So that was interesting. The mental competency thing is what, yes, there's a Grand Canyon in Arizona. Imagine that. The Grand Canyon actually is Arizona and Utah. Like, you can get to the North Rim from Utah. The most popular tourist destination is the South Rim of the Grand Canyon, and that is entered through Arizona. I was on a trip there a few years ago with my BFF, who you see as my emoji. That's Charlie. And we went to the Grand Canyon a few years ago, and then we went to the Grand Canyon a few years before that. And it was very nice. It's the Sunset Ridge on the South Rim east side, like as far east as you can go before you exit out of the Grand Canyon. That sunset area is a very nice place to watch the sunset. I don't know if we have much more to talk about on this. Lori Vallow speaks in the Arizona courtroom. Let's watch that. Let's watch her speak in the Arizona courtroom, because she doesn't want to talk to the mental health experts who can determine whether or not she's capable and competent to stand trial. But she does speak in the Arizona courtroom in this particular article.
About 40 minutes, that discussion today was really all about whether Vallow is mentally fit to stand trial here.
No, we already watched this. Never mind. We already watched that. Here's where she wants to represent herself. This is what we kind of talked about before, and where Abraham Lincoln says, yeah, what he said.
Are those cases going to be combined, or are they going to be done separately?
Well, they are 2 separate cases, but they're going to be handled at the same hearing. Okay. So you can talk to your lawyer, but they are 2 separate cases, which means that you'd have 2 separate proceedings going forward if it goes to trial.
Okay.
Now, for what's tipping the scales, jurors could be getting used to that voice of the future as cult mom Lori Vallow Daybell's back in the headlines. 2 big developments in her Arizona case. One of those developments leaves her pending conspiracy trial in jeopardy without a final date. So the judge has granted her motion for a competency evaluation. So we don't know when this thing is going to go. we know this trial is about her former husband, Charles Vallow, though. We know that he is the victim on this homicide case. And there's an attempted homicide as well of her former nephew, Brandon Boudreaux. Thank goodness he survived. And there's more. So the Doomsday Cult Mom's also looking to be without counsel. She wants to represent herself. So the court is going to wait and see what happens at that competency evaluation to then make a decision on the request to go pro se. Oh, so how could these recent developments tip the scales? And what does that trial look like? Let's bring in retired criminal defense attorney Kirk Nermy and talk about it. Kirk practiced in Arizona for many, many years. So Cult Mom Kirk, where do we start? Let's start first with her wanting to go pro se. Your thoughts on that?
It doesn't surprise me at all. You know, earlier when we were talking about Sarah Boone, we talked about image, right? And image is going to be important to the female narcissistic defendant like Lori Vallow seems to be. And we also think about her legal situation, right? She's already been convicted. She's spending life in prison based on the convictions of Idaho. And we know that whenever she has a chance to speak, it's about her image. It's about propping up her cult-like beliefs, right? So to me, I think she's probably having some conflict with her attorney. I know her former attorney is a good, competent attorney. He's probably telling her some of the things she wants to talk about aren't relevant, and she was going to try to use this trial as a forum to put forward her beliefs.
Mm-hmm. I think you're absolutely right, Kirk. The competency is then this other issue, right? So now it's being called into question. She's going to be evaluated. Would you speak to what's going to happen in this process, the type of evaluation, the standard, kind of what we can expect as it seems that the docket is noting the judge saying they call it the Rule 11 process in Arizona.
Yeah, very familiar with that process, Julie. One of the first things that happens is there is what they call a pre-screen evaluation, meaning two doctors will take a look at Miss Vallow, take a look at her records, but it's only a couple pages. It's not very in-depth. And if they agree that further evaluation is needed, and that's probably what happened in this case given the extensive record, then they refer it to a full evaluation. That's where the doctors take a more in-depth look at Miss Vallow's mental health, her history, medications, all those sort of things. They do an interview with her. They may even do an MMPI. They may do different things on her to decide whether or not she is competent or not. And then that full evaluation goes before a particularized court to decide whether she's competent to stand trial. One of the things I think is important is we're not talking about insanity here, just so people don't get confused. We're not talking about insanity as a defense, what have you. We're talking about just the competency to stand trial.
Right. Kirk, really appreciate that. Yeah, the here and now inquiry, you know, today, is she competent to stand trial? Thank you for making that distinction. People get that confused all the time with insanity, where we look backwards at the offense date. Tell me, Kirk, so noted in the court docket is that the withdrawal of that attorney you noted who serves at the public defender's office, and the court notes that what's going to happen now is she'll get counsel appointed through the Office of Public Defense Services. Is this kind of like a conflict counsel office in Arizona? If you're aware, is it one of those offices that will take cases if the PD's office is conflicted out?
It is, Julie. So there's Maricopa County, a huge court system. There's 3 indigent defense services with
So there's not just a huge court system. There's like a huge court complex. There's like 2 or 3 towers and multiple buildings associated with the court complex. So when I head out in the morning, I'm going to head out at like 6 o'clock and give myself like an extra hour and a half to find out where everything is going down. And if there's a competency hearing that happens and if it's open to the public, I'll be there. But if it's not, I won't be surprised. If she backs out of it or if it's not open to the public, I won't be surprised. But if it's open to the public, I'll be there for y'all and I'll give you an update.
Attorneys working. And then what happens if there's a conflict? And one of the things about a conflict that people should also understand is that if the one member of the public defender's office has a conflict, the entire public defender's office has a conflict. So they go outside of these indigent representation, and they have people that work under contract on an hourly basis with the county that will be assigned the case.
Which is great. Yeah, I remember, in law school, learning about conflicts. It's fascinating, as you noted, what you can do, your partner can do. What you can't do, your partner can't do. And just like in the offices that serve the public, yeah, that conflict bleeds through to everybody. So that's hard when there's so much service going on and so many people are being legally served by a particular office. And sometimes vetting them takes a long time to make sure that there is no conflict that exists. Kirk, tell me, when we think about Cult Mom and what she's doing, do you think this is for show? Do you think some of this is just to kind of go against the grain, so to speak?
Well, no, I think it goes back to what I said earlier. It's all about image, the presentation, right? Where Sarah Boone's not going to take a plea and accept guilt. Lori Vallow is going to use this trial as her platform, Julie. That's her goal.
Yeah. She's already infamous, as we know. Maybe she'll make friends with Jodi Arias out in Arizona. Who knows? As long as they stay away from you, Kirk.
Who was that, Julie? I never heard of her.
Never heard of her. Yeah. Who are we talking about there?
All right. So, yes, everything is closed on Sundays. It is. And if you buy alcohol in Utah, you have to buy it from a state store, right? Okay, so I'm going to wrap this up, and I'm just going to share my BFF on the south rim of the Grand Canyon at the east end at Sunset Point. I don't remember what you call it, but that's my BFF. That's Charlie. Sorry. I shouldn't have done that. I miss him. I miss him so much. So everybody have a good night. Thanks for dropping in. And I appreciate you all. I appreciate your comments and your positive feedback. Everybody have a good night, and I'll catch you on the flip side, on the other side of the Lori Vallow hearings tomorrow, if I get there. Peace out.